So our ZTA badge is the most iconic symbol of our organization, and actually it remains almost completely unchanged since it was first designed in 1898. Let me read to you from the Constitution of Bylaws. Our badge is described as a small black enameled shield superimposed upon a gold shield bearing a 5-pointed crown with the letters ZTA arranged around it, and below it the word Themis in Greek. So our founders knew they wanted a symbol to represent our organization that everybody could see. They consulted with Giles Mabane Smith, who was Francis Yancey Smith's older brother, and he helped them come up with the original idea for the badge. But the people that actually chose the final shape and form of it were Cammie, Francis, and Maud. Our earliest badges were made by Mr. E.C. Wiltsey, the jeweler in Farmville. He wasn't that much older than the founders himself. And fun fact, he's also the man that gave Cammie the gift of strawberries that kind of kicked off the whole Zeta thing. Now, our early Wiltsey badges, as I like to call them, are all unique. He was doing them by hand, and some of them are a little more faithful to the shape and style that we expect to see. The founders' badges originally were just plain flat. It was just the black shield. There were only a few of those made for the founders and the very first new members of Alpha Chapter. And then about a year after that, he started making jeweled badges. And all of them are gorgeous, but they're all completely different from one another. He must have been cutting each piece out by hand. So we're lucky enough to have 3 of the earliest jeweled badges that Mr. Wiltsey made for members of Alpha Chapter. If you take a look at them, you can see that one has a 3-pointed crown. One of them, the shield, looks a little like a blob and not so much of a shield. And the stones are beautiful, even if the shapes aren't exactly quite right. But then we realized as Zeta was growing, we needed a more reliable source for our badges. And we moved our operations to the A.H. Fetting Company out of Baltimore, Maryland. That was in about 1902. Now, the funny thing, while all of this is going on, there was also another jeweler who we hadn't really authorized, the Auld Company, and they were making teeny tiny miniature badges. And people were using them to put them on umbrellas, fraternity umbrellas. You can find them. Like they just glue a badge or a crest on it. About as random as like putting it on, I don't know, an air freshener, and giving them as gifts and wearing them kind of like scatter pins. At the 1912 convention, Maud made it really clear to Dr. Hopkins, who was the grand president at that time, that she felt that the badge should only be worn over the heart and never turned into another piece of jewelry because it would take away from its importance and the symbolism. So it finally came down to a convention vote in 1912 to standardize the size of the badge, and the one that we used as a standard for all badges that have been made from that date up until the present was the one of Dr. May Agnes Hopkins. It is a beautiful diamond and opal gold badge, and they measured it, and if you hold up one of our current day badges, it is exactly the same. So this convention vote decided that the badge could only be worn over your heart and not on outer pieces of apparel. Kind of like what I'm wearing here. The badge goes on the inner layer that touches my heart, not the outer layer. In addition, that convention resolution also decreed that we could not change the badge from the form it is. You couldn't pick the shield off and put it on something for a souvenir. You couldn't turn it into jewelry. At the next convention in 1915, and yes, at that time, conventions were 3 years apart, they decided that it would be acceptable to have a chapter guard attached to your badge. They just wanted to make sure that you could have something that would personalize your badge, but not take away from its original intent. Although we have made a couple of changes to that resolution about what could be attached to your badge. A couple of decades after that convention, they designed a grand chapter guard, which is what National Council was called back then, could wear to signify their rank in the organization. And it was the 5-pointed torch. And then slightly later in our history, we determined that it was also acceptable for white violets to have their white violet badge attached to the badge, but it could never be higher than the badge. Not your chapter guard or any other attachment should be any higher. So remember, when you're putting it on, make sure the badge is here and your guard is further down. And then the last addition to the allowable things on the badge would be our executive director's guard. It is a pillar which stands for her being the support of the organization at the official level. We did right around the time of World War II, start discussing having a special badge for our national president. The national president's badge is slightly different than what you are wearing on your heart. It is the same size as a founder's. The national president is given that badge as a gift by the fraternity when she starts her term of office, and she can keep it for the rest of her life. So wearing your Zeta Tau Alpha badge is a privilege. It's the one thing that connects us to hundreds of thousands of sisters from the past up until the present. Wearing your badge makes it easier to live your values every day because you've got something right on your heart to remind you what you promised to do for Zeta Tau Alpha and for yourself.